GBV and disability experts. And we're very excited to have our South Sudan GBV Hewara team on board. South Sudan GBV Hewara played a very significant role in the development of this resource right from the start in June. So we'll be hearing from them about how, first of all, you know, what their focus on GBV and disability inclusion is, but also how they see this resource helping them. We'll also have the pleasure to have the Global GBV Hewara Coordinator, Jennifer Chase, officially close this event. Check the time. Let's give it 1 more minute before we can kick off this event. Meanwhile, can you introduce yourself and your organization in the chat? Please introduce yourself as well as the organization you represent in the chat. Thank you. Wow, I'm happy to see people from Somalia, Ethiopia online, Southern Africa, regional offices, UN Women. Yemen is on the line as well. It's amazing. South Sudan, Ireland, Ukraine. Wow. Okay. Good morning, everyone. We are going to kick off our launch event. My name is Christine Apio, and I work with the Gender-Based Violence Area of Responsibility based here in Kenya, supporting East and Southern Africa region. I work together with my colleagues, Jessica Gorham, who is the Regional Emergency GBV Advisor, as well as the team lead. We have Christine Kabele on the line, who is our admin assistant for the Hewara. I specifically lead the GBV Hewara workstream on preparedness, prevention, and inclusion in East and Southern Africa region. And I do co-chair the intersectionality pillar of the regional GBV working group for East and Southern Africa, together with George Odwe of Population Council. Without further ado, I would like to provide a brief highlight of our agenda for this event. We'll have an opening remark from George Odwe, who is the co-chair of the intersectionality pillar of the regional GBV working group for East and Southern Africa region. After that, we'll hear from the interagency, the regional disability working group for East and Southern Africa. And then we will hear from the South Sudan and GBV area of responsibility. And then we will briefly introduce the new resource to all of you. And that will be followed by question and answers. I'll urge you to post any questions that you'll have on the chat, but we'll also have opportunity to have interactive Q&A sessions, so you're able to raise your hands and ask any questions, but also share any comments you might have. And now we will have the closing remark by Jessica Chase, the global coordinator of the GBV area of responsibility based in Geneva. So that is briefly what our program looks like for this launch event. Without wasting time, I would like to invite George Odwe of Population Council, who co-chairs the intersectionality pillar of the regional GBV working group. George, kindly take on the mic.
Thank you very much, Christine, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Apologies, my camera cannot work at the moment, but I hope you can hear me clearly.
George, you're a little bit low. Can you speak closer to your mic?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, a little bit, but if you can increase your voice.
Yeah, I'm trying a little bit to increase. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you sound a bit far from your laptop.
Not really sure the problem now. What about now?
We can hear you. Can others hear George? Just to ensure it's not only my problem. Kabele, can you hear George clearly?
Yes. If he maintains that volume.
Okay, George, please proceed.
But he seems to be too far from his computer.
Actually, I'm very close. I think the problem might be my internet. But can you hear me now?
Yes, it's much better.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christine. As Christine mentioned, we are really glad that we are here today to launch this very important resource. Intersectionality Pillar has been working on this particular resource for the past, I think, 6 months. But let me just take a brief moment just to talk about what the intersectionality pillar is all about. So the pillar established in 2021 as one of the thematic pillars of the GBV AR working group. So the overall aim was basically to provide technical support to field teams and regional GBV practitioners and researchers on intersectionality as a tool to analyze as well as understand intersections of gender with other inequalities, including gender identity, ethnicity, disability, among others. And so today is very important because this year, as the intersectionality pillar, we made a very deliberate duty or decision to work on a number of issues, including disability, as well as working on issues related to adolescent survivors of gender-based violence. We just recently concluded a very successful symposium on male child and adolescent survivors of gender-based violence, especially focusing on service delivery and prevention perspective. And so this particular information seat is also another milestone for us because it will provide an overview of the situation on GBV and disability and making very important considerations for including persons with disability in GBV programming and coordination. And so I would want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this launch and thank you very much. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much, George, for that very succinct overview of the intersectionality pillar of the regional GBV working group for East and Southern Africa region and its focus. That sets a very good precedent to now call our next speaker from the Interagency Regional Disability Working Group for East and Southern Africa region. Sunita, if you're on the line, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So good morning and welcome also to everyone for the launch of the Gender-Based Violence and Disability Inclusion Fact Sheet. I'm really pleased to also co-open today's conversation on behalf of the East and Southern Africa Interagency Disability Inclusion Working Group, which was initiated by UNICEF about a little over in 2022 as a way to connect and strengthen approaches to disability inclusion between UN agencies working in East and Southern Africa. UN Women currently co-chairs this working group, which includes representatives from UNICEF, UNFPA, UNESCO, UNHCR, WFP, and remains open to other sister agencies engaging in support of the UN system disability inclusion strategy, as well as our shared commitment to applying an intersectional approach to all that we do. We also appreciate the partnership with the Regional Gender-Based Violence Working Group Intersectionality Pillar in developing the fact sheet, which is being launched in commemoration of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, as well as in commemoration of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which took place on Sunday, December 3rd. For many of us working in the areas of disability inclusion and ending violence against women and other forms of gender-based violence, we understand the significant challenges to upholding the rights of women and girls to live their right free of violence. We know that there are gaps in the data, although the evidence which exists clearly shows the increased risk that women and girls with disabilities face because of structural barriers and discrimination against them based on both their gender identity and disability. We also know there are gaps in how institutions working on addressing GBV understand and apply disability inclusion. We know that there are disconnects between the organizations working on disability inclusion, as well as those working on addressing GBV, the lack of accessible services, inadequate investments, the list goes on and on. So this fact sheet really offers us a point of reference as we look to close some of those gaps on disability inclusion and gender-based violence. It's one of many actions that have been taken. It's not the first, it's not the last, but we really do hope that it will enrich the work that we're all doing and allow us to really advance towards having that shared vision of a region where all women and girls and their diversity can live free from gender-based violence and discrimination. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much, Sunita, co-chair the Interagency Regional Disability Working Group, which is UN focused mainly. And now it has been an exciting journey since June 2023, working together with you and the disability inclusion experts at UNICEF. I don't know whether Christelle and Mola are on this call, but it's really been exciting. Personally, the journey has enabled me to really learn and unlearn so many things, especially when it comes to integrating the needs of persons with disability in GBV coordination and programming. So thank you so much for the collaboration, for the partnership, and we look forward to strengthening this collaboration. Next, we are going to listen from South Sudan GBV AOR coordination team. As I mentioned in the beginning, South Sudan GBV AOR provided significant inputs into this resource right from the beginning. And we are lucky to have one of their member organizations, Humanity and Inclusion, which does a lot of work with persons with disability, who as well provided reviews and technical inputs in this resource that enable this resource to have a very strong perspective from the field. So over to Fanta from South Sudan GBV AOR.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Good morning, colleagues. I appreciate the opportunity given to the South Sudan GBV AOR coordination team. So just to say a few points, of course, gender-based violence is a big issue here in South Sudan, especially for women and girls being at risk because of the protracted nature of the conflict and the humanitarian situation. And then when we look at that, women and girls with disabilities are particularly vulnerable to GBV due to multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination facing highest risk of violence, limited access to support services, and even inadequate access to justice. In one of the material that was produced back in 2019 by Humanity and Inclusion, women with disabilities are up to 10 times more likely than women without impairment to experience sexual, emotional, and physical violence, as well as forced sterilizations and the like. So, in terms of vulnerability for GBV, it is clear that women and girls with disability are higher risk for GBV. Now, recognizing all this, the GBV AOR here in South Sudan has considered disability inclusion as one of the priority thematic areas in its strategic plan for 2024 and 2025, which is also aligned with the 2024 HRP that has been recently released globally. So some of the focus areas in which we as a coordination team, along with the GBV partners, would like to promote persons with disabilities to have meaningful participation on decision-making, including on GBV prevention, risk mitigation, and response services, by using some technological available products. There were some innovations in one of our discussions, especially during our strategic plan formulation. Persons with disability were actively engaged and submitted a lot of contribution on that. So one of the areas which has been suggested by them was the use of technological products to ensure that information and access to services will be enhanced to them. The other thing is empowering persons with disability and support them with assistive devices. For instance, back 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, we allocated some 300,000 to Humanity and Inclusion, which is specifically targeting GBV issues among persons with disabilities in a place called creative or administrative area, where they have procured some assistive devices to enhance their capacities. When we see the other aspect, the analysis of available data to remove barriers in order to enhance access to GBV service would be another priority area. And then the disaggregation of the GBV data, which would also help us for evidence-based programming. We want to work very closely with Humanity Inclusion, as well as South Sudan Union of Persons with Disability, the South Sudan Women Safety Network, and other actors to ensure that inclusive and accessible services are available for GBV survivors. So to achieve this, one, this fact sheet, which will be launched today, will be instrumental, and then it will be really widely utilized to advise and mobilize partners, including donors, to work on GBV and disability inclusion. As of now, we have already circulated the fact sheet to a wider network of GBV partners in South Sudan, based on the request that we received from you, Christine. And then also we'll strengthen collaboration and coordination among actors. Essential for disability rights groups, women organizations to foster more comprehensive and inclusive response to GBV and disability inclusion. We will also reach to donors in order to allocate more resources and funding opportunities with specific interest to implement comprehensive programs that address GBV and disability inclusion. Last but not least, the data collection and monitoring system is also critical, both by our AOR as well as GBV partners, to capture experience and needs of persons with disability who have been affected by GBV to inform evidence-based programming. So these are some of the priority activities which we are envisaging to do, but for all this, the use of this partnership would be instrumental for us. Thank you so much. Any question, I'm more than happy to address. Hello, Christine, did you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much, Fanta. Fanta is the coordinator of the GBV AOR in South Sudan, and IRC is the co-coordinator for the GBV AOR, and I can see also Florence Adio, the co-coordinator, on the line. Florence, would you like to say anything?
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
This is
Florence Adeyo, would you like to say anything?
Yes, thank you so much, Christine, and thank you, Fanta, for highlighting the key commitments and actions that we have in South Sudan. Indeed, this is one of the core, actions that we have put in our work stream to ensure that we work with the persons with disabilities and include them also in the humanitarian program cycle, including right from assessments, the resource mobilization, the implementation, monitoring and evaluation, and all the processes of humanitarian program cycle. We want to ensure that, persons with disabilities are included and their voices, their decisions are included. That should tailor the kind of programming that is being implemented in the different communities. Apart from that, we have also seen in terms of, proposal development, we want to ensure that, the data is disaggregated, not only men, boys, girls, and women, but also to include persons with disabilities. What percentage of the resource is going to them? How are they included in the programming? So this is critical for us, and it is very, very important that we analyze this before even selecting partners that will be given the different funding streams that we have in South Sudan. And I also wanted to mention in terms of the working with the organizations for persons with disabilities. I think humanity and inclusion has played a great role in shaping, some of the different work streams that we have to ensure that the issues of persons with disabilities are really included. One area that we were also advocating for was in terms of the distribution, because we know South Sudan has conflict, South Sudan has flooding, and intercommunal violence and armed groups. So most of the persons with disabilities are greatly affected, and of course in terms of GBV, as Fanta already mentioned, they are actually at more risks. And so in terms of distribution, we have always advocated with food security and livelihood to ensure that, the locations should be accessible to those that have functional disabilities. So including women and girls, boys and men, that have disabilities, the locations for food distribution should be accessible. And that means getting back to the point that I mentioned before, that they should be in the different committees. And so we also advocate with the different clusters when we are doing risk mitigation in the different clusters. They must ensure that the issues of inclusion are well tailored in their programming. Thank you so much, and I hope this goes on well as we continue to advocate more for persons with disabilities and for the inclusion aspect in our programming and coordination as well. Thank you. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much, Fanta and Florence of South Sudan GBV area of responsibility. I think what both of you have shared is a testament that inclusion is possible. Inclusion is not rocket science. Inclusion is something that does not necessarily require additional resources, but it's about also how we program. How do we design our GBV programs right from the beginning? And I'm really very excited to let everyone know that I together with the National GBV for South Sudan went on a field mission to Unity State about a week ago. And it was amazing to see women with disabilities at the safe spaces, at the women and girls friendly spaces in the two sites that we visited. So for me, this really says to me about the commitment and the commitment and the focus that the South Sudan GBV AOR has placed on disability inclusion in GBV programming, but also in GBV coordination. And I'm wondering, I was actually imagining if the South Sudan GBV AOR has ever thought of documenting their work on disability inclusion as a best practice. And it's really amazing to hear that in resource allocation, the GBV AOR for South Sudan decided to allocate $300,000 to humanity and inclusion, which is mainly focused on disability, to address the issues of GBV and disability inclusion. Huge applause to South Sudan GBV AOR for that. Really excellent to hear about also the data analysis and the focus on proposal development, going beyond to see in every proposal that is an agency or organization is submitting, are they very intentional around targeting persons with disabilities? But what is really exciting is also around including in your advocacy with the different clusters on risk mitigation, a focus on inclusion of women and girls with disabilities. And I think this was also an area that one of the organizations highlighted during the mission. So really exciting to hear of all the great initiatives and efforts that South Sudan GBV AOR is doing, and their commitment to continue strengthen inclusion of persons with disabilities in GBV coordination and GBV programming. So thank you so much, Florence and Fanta. So next, we'll take you through a brief.
Christine?
Yes, Fanta.
Christine, I want to ask your advice. There was one question that came out following our submission. I want to check with you if there is a dedicated time for question and answer, or we address it now.
Fanta, there is a dedication time for Q&A. Are you able to hear me?
Thank you. Okay. Yes, thank you so much. That's clear.
Yes.
We'll wait for that time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So very briefly, I'll take you through the resource. Just allow me time to. Sorry. Okay. I will share the resource. Okay. So briefly, you'll see there's a cover page, and then there's a section of why the fact sheet. This section will it gives you a bit of a background of about persons with disabilities, some of the types of disabilities, but also you'll see that statistics of the number of people that have a disability. So globally, 1.3 billion people have a disability. But when you look at that the 1.3 billion, out of that, about 80% of these people live in developing countries, and live in extreme poverty. And there's a section on GBV among persons with disabilities. So this section will tell you more about, how does GBV manifest among persons with disabilities? Does it affect more women, more children, more girls and men? So it will give you all the details about GBV among persons with disabilities. There's a section on terminology. And you'll notice that under the sections, it strongly recognizes that persons with disabilities are not inherently vulnerable, but rather the vulnerability is imposed on them. So if we design a women and girls safe spaces, for example, that cannot be accessible by women and girls with disabilities, then in a way we are imposing the vulnerability on women and girls. We make it difficult for them to access services at the women and girls safe spaces. But also the use of terminologies. A lot of times, what kind of terminologies do we use in our strategies? What kind of terminologies do we use in our standard operating procedures, referral pathways, proposals? So referring to persons with disabilities as persons living with disabilities, as handicapped or disabled people is not the right terminology. So the right terminology to use is to refer to them as persons with disabilities. And if you are not sure about how to refer to them, it's recommended you consult with them. So there's a whole section on terminology on disability. And then there's a section that looks at the common barriers to disability inclusion in GBV programming and coordination. And talks about the attitudinal barriers, environmental barriers, institutional barriers, communication barriers, etc. There's a section on applying intersectional lens to disability inclusion. We do know that just like women and men are not a homogeneous group, persons with disabilities are also not a homogeneous group. There are probably those who are younger. There are probably those who identify as LGBTQ or have a different sexual orientation. There are probably those who are older. So this is really to enable GBV actors really understand that even when you're designing your program or in your coordination, you ensure that you are addressing the needs of persons with disabilities in their different uniqueness. Then there's a section on the key considerations that you can take to ensure that your programming and coordination is inclusive. So this makes different provisions, including coordination, policy, advocacy. What are some of the things you need to take into consideration? In terms of assessments and monitoring, what are some of the key considerations? Access to GBV services, awareness raising and community education, capacity building. So it has it has different key considerations that can serve as a guide to you if you're thinking of having inclusion of persons with disability in your coordination or programming as a priority. And then there's a list of key resources that you can make reference to, as well as videos. So there are short videos that you can watch. There are also relevant trainings. So if you would like to enhance your knowledge and understanding of disability inclusion in GBV, there are some trainings that you can undertake, and these trainings are online, and the links are in this resource. And so that is the resource in brief. So you can you can already see that the resource is not too lengthy, too wordy, but it's also made as practical as possible. There are also examples made in the resource. So I would urge you all to read through the resource. And we are now open for Q&A. And Kabele, can you share the link for the resource? So this resource it's already uploaded on the GBV AOR website. You can access it using the link. But also for all of you who are registered for this, I think we do have your email. We can also send you. We can also send you as an attachment. One exciting news, we are currently developing a video in collaboration with the Interagency Regional Disability Working Group. And this video will accompany the launch, the dissemination of this resource. So watch out for the video. So thank you so much. The link has been posted. So now we are open for question and answers. Kabele, are there some questions on the chat?
So far, not yet. We don't have any questions yet, yeah.
All right. So we can, you can just raise your hand. Adelaide, I can see your hand raised. Please go ahead with your question.
Mine is not a question. Adelaide, by the way, I'm a photojournalist. My only issue is we've invited several women from our organization, and as it looks, you don't have any sign language interpreters for some of them. So I don't know how they are going to be listening in or what they are supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very important question. And thank you for bringing that up. And we are so sorry for those who need sign language who are online. We really apologize for that. But just so you know that the video that is being produced will have a sign language interpretation provided, and it will speak more of also this resource. But we have really taken note of that. We are very sorry and we apologize. And thank you for bringing that. I can see 3 hands, 4 hands up. Okay. Sorry, I'm able to see those with hands up. Okay. Samuel Olara, please go ahead. Can you introduce yourself, your organization, and then proceed with your question? Samuel Olara. Okay, if Samuel is not there, Abubakar Sadiq Kau. Abubakar, can see your hands up. Okay. Dr. Fatima Ismail Mohammed.
Hello, Christine.
Okay. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, Abubakar.
Yeah, I am.
Wow. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, no matter, no matter.
Okay, sorry, Fatima. Abubakar, can you please wait? Let's hear from Fatima, and then we come to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Fatima, please proceed with your question.
No, I haven't no question, but nice to meet you, all of them. Dr. Fatim Ismail Muhammad, staff work of Novel, especially GBV workers. So I'm so happy to invite you as UNFBA and the preparation, the invitation, this program of GBV. So all of them great and thank you so much. I'm so happy to see you all of them. But I haven't no question. So I work GBV like every day. I saw disability, like disability or under no disability as GBV women and girls. And every time I saw some galleries or some women is as in the disability like GBV, especially my target in Dainile target like district in Mogadishu, Somalia. So and I'm so happy to invite in this program or this meeting. So all of them, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fatima. And then I hope this resource will be, will help you and serve as a reference point for your organization. Thank you. Abubakar, please.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Christine. This is Abubakar Sadiq Kau. I work for CPPLI, a woman-led organization in northeastern Nigeria. So my question is that, actually, in all our programming, we are making sure that people with disability, we are included. But basically, actually, we just used to integrate them with just some few percentage. Like maybe in case management, maybe you reach maybe 20 or 25. In CFS activities, we reach maybe like 50 or so. So how are you going to do it? Any standard in these guidelines on how like if you are doing programming, or at least how many percentage are you going to like include them in your programming? Thank you, Anova.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. We have taken note. I don't know whether Sunita is still on the line. Your question will be responded to. We'll also attend questions on the chat, so please feel free to write. So can we hear from the next? Max Akol.
Yes, please. Thank you. And well done, first of all. Appeal for the well done. Mine is not a question, but I think I missed out on just a kind of a contribution based on what is on the ground. For example, I am from IRC, Uganda. One challenge that I've faced in the field, especially with persons living with disability, is the problem of translation.
Sorry,
sign
Max, we
language
can't hear
interpreter. A problem of sign language interpreters.
Max,
Yes,
I think
are
we
we
lost
hearing
you.
Oh God. I'm saying.
Okay. As we wait for
Yeah.
Max.
Okay. All right.
We can hear
Can
him,
we hear
Christine.
from
We can hear him.
But Christine, we are getting
well.
Mark clear. We are hearing Mark clearly.
So, okay.
Yes, I was saying.
Jessica, can you?
I'm not...
Because I can't hear anyone.
Okay,
but
fine.
we are
Can
very
you just,
clear.
help
We can hear Max. Clear.
With the moderation as I check my network.
Okay, fine. Okay, can I go on, moderator? Okay. It's okay, I'll get back.
Okay, I think if you can write your questions in the chat, we can also field questions that way. And then did you want to continue on? Was it Samuel? Did we?
Yes, I was saying, I don't know whether I'm clear now.
Yep, you're very clear. Go ahead.
Yes, just not a question, but just maybe an emphasis. The challenge that is on the ground, especially working with the people with disabilities, is a problem of sign language interpretation. Yeah, I work as a GBV lead here on my settlement, Chaka, but we don't have any translation. You find a survivor who is a GBV and is person with disability, there's no way you can help, you can't communicate. So I was just trying to emphasize, if there is a standard, we could have at least every settlement should have an interpreter at a minimum. I know we all work under, we all have a component of inclusion, but if a lead inclusion partner in every settlement, for example, HI, could have a sign language interpreter, at least in every settlement, it would help. It's really a challenge supporting persons with disabilities here at the, settlement level.
Thank you, Max, for that reflection. Even ourselves that we thought that even having just captions would be enough, and we're understanding the complexities and also the need to have interpreters as well, sign language interpreters. So that's a really good note to reflect on. I think not just in South Sudan, but all across our responses in East and Southern Africa, and how important it is to make sure that we're making services accessible. I see that Samuel Alara, you have your hand raised. We have enough time for a few more questions. So why don't we go to Samuel if you would like to pose your question? And if not, you can write your questions in the chat as well. Okay, how about for Hanan Zanun, if you would like to go next, or you may write your questions in the chat. Hanan?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yep.
we can hear you.
Yeah. Actually, I don't have a question, but I really appreciate the work that you are doing in this fact sheet. And I would like to announce or to share with you an experience we had it, not in Africa, but in Northwest Syria. But now we are working to make it globally. GenCap, I'm sorry, I did not introduce myself. This is Hanan Zanoun. I'm Senior Gender Advisor from GenCap, now deployed to Yemen. But I worked recently in Northwest Syria, and we reviewed the JHA training. The JHA training is Gender Equality in Humanitarian Action, which was specifically for gender. We worked with many advisors and area of responsibility, including the GBV, to make the material more inclusive. So we are now not like talking about gender as a standalone term, but we included the people with disabilities. We included PSEA. We included the AAP, Accountability for Affected Population. We also added advocacy. And in terms of working on the GBV, we worked on access, opportunities, and barriers. Also, we worked on enablers in how can we modify our projects, our response in humanitarian action to make it more inclusive, to include all of the people, not only women with disabilities, also boys, girls, men with disabilities, in addition to other vulnerable groups. I'm so sorry, we are now reviewing the material and we will share it globally for people who are interested in this approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your feedback, Hanan. And we are looking forward to receiving the finished products, because it sounds like those would be really interesting in other contexts as well. And I see that we have a couple of questions in the chat that we will address. One is a very important contribution. There's a lot of need to do advocacy with governments, depending on how systems work, to budget for interpreters in camps, and definitely agencies working in the settlement schemes being able to budget for interpretation but of course, overall budgeting for inclusion, including accessibility broadly. And Liz, we appreciate your feedback, even the previous ones you gave as well, that if we're going to be developing these types of guidance and fact sheets, we need to also make sure that we're promoting it, the accessibility with all audiences and persons with different types of disabilities. So Liz, we appreciate your feedback, and it is timely. And then we have another question from Suzanne. Is there a possibility of organizing online training for the partners on sign language? And I will turn that one over to maybe from our I'm guessing that would be quite complex, but perhaps if someone knows of some opportunities for training, they can write it in the chat. But also maybe we can ask Christine. I think she might come back now and can take over with some of the questions. But Christine, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the intersectionality pillar, if there are future plans in terms of rolling out the fact sheet or the next steps. Over to you, Christine Appio from the intersectionality pillar and the GBVAOR.
Thank you, Jessica. Can you hear me?
We can hear you well, Christine.
Thank you, and apologies for the glitches now back, and thank you, Jessica, for jumping in to cover. The issue of sign language is a very critical but also very important point. And I think what we can do would be to have conversation with humanity and inclusion, but also the Interagency Disability Working Group to see if we could, a possibility of co-developing a training in sign language. I'm imagining, just to get it correct, is it a GBV training that is delivered using sign language?
I think the question was more about how can we make more of our humanitarian counterparts more versed in sign language instead of in these really hard to reach areas where interpreters might be a bit more difficult to find. Is there a way that we can at least to have the basics? And it's a question that's an interesting one that maybe we don't have the answer to at this time.
Yeah, but we will bring that to our the Regional Disability Working Group and see if that is an area that they might be interested in supporting in the near future, but not now. So we'll take that up as an advocacy point.
Great. And I think we see Alice on the line too, our old friend Alice, who is also again asking about how we can support to have resource persons in a place to support disability activities. And my initial response to that is, Alice, as you see, we do need more resource people, but I think it's about advocacy, that everyone on this call today and beyond needs to advocate for the inclusion of resource persons and accessibility. And then, go ahead, Christine.
No, Jessica, just a quick thought. I remember many years back in Ethiopia when we had a survivor who was deaf and needed sign language. I actually did realize that one of the response officers, was trained in sign language. So maybe what we could also do, and this is also something the GBV could do, would be to sort of do a mapping of the GBV actors in country. Is there any organization that has within their teams anyone trained in sign language interpretation, so that we're able to know, what kind of resources we already have as we advocate for the possibility of supporting skilling around that area. Over.
And Christine, it looks like Hadia also had that very same thought as she wrote in the chat and said, can we do a mapping of those resource people. And I think that's something very practical here at the Regional GBV Working Group for East and Southern Africa through our partner organizations would be able to do. I am looking at the time. I think we will take one more question from Victor Addis, and then we will send it over to Jennifer Chase for the closing. So Victor, over to you.
Thank you. I have just 3 concerns that I want to put forward, not really a question, but I really appreciate to be part of this workshop. My name is Addis Victor. I'm a disability activist and also a person with disability. One, I'm looking at the concerns that we need to look at, not looking at persons with disability as beneficiaries, but as key actors. Because when we involve them as key actors, we really understand the concept of disability and not looking them as only beneficiaries. Now, the second thing is that disability is not a measuring stick for vulnerability, just as it has been highlighted in the fact sheet. It is very important that we should not use disability as a measuring stick for vulnerability. Then understanding the last thing is intersectionality. We should understand that intersectionality is one of the protection risks because it heightens risks and also have a number of discrimination. So in terms of programming, we are saying disability mainstreaming perspective. Mainstreaming disability perspective is a significant amount of quality information so that we can really understand the rights of persons with disability when doing humanitarian aspects. So these are the key 3 things that I feel like sharing with the team. And really, I was seeing a number of things have been pushed to HI, but I want to say disability concerns is for everybody. When looking at sign language as a key challenge, why can't we take action and look into as protection actors or humanitarian actors to look into this key issue other than pushing it to humanitarian inclusion, because they might not cover it all. But when we take it as a key to all of us, we will be able to address the issue of sign language. But not only sign language, you are looking at also intellectual disability is another concern, because we are kind of using big terms in our documentation and all this. Then persons with disability, especially the intellectual disabilities, will find it difficult. So this is one thing I just want to put forward so that we can be able to address it together. I am from South Sudan. Thank you.
Victor, thank you for those really good thoughts. I liked, every one of your points was so on in terms of how also we as a community view persons with disabilities as not beneficiaries, but as part of working towards inclusion and accessibility. So really, really helpful. John, I see your hand up. We're going to come to you. I was just informed that we do have a bit more time. And so we will take a couple questions from the chat. And we had one participant who asked how they can become a part of the interagency GBV or disability working group. And I'll ask Christine to respond to that. My understanding is it's a very UN focused group, but Christine, can you tell us a little more about the interagency disabilities working group and if they are able to join?
Thank you, Jessica. The Interagency Disability Working Group, unfortunately, it's a very UN-focused one. I don't think we do have the one which is broader at this level. However, we were able to work with them because they have 2 disability inclusion specialists who are members of their working group. And I think maybe one of the areas that we could explore, Jessica, would be since the intersectionality pillar covers quite a wide range of areas, if there is interest of having a broad-based coordination mechanism for strengthening integration of GBV in disability inclusion, we could explore a possibility of maybe having just a very small task team that could engage under the IS pillar, that could also involve members from the field who are interested in being part of that conversation, to be a part of it. But the regional disability working group at the moment is quite limited to UN agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I see that we have John Kimani. If you would like to either give your reflection or your questions, over to you, John Kimani.
Okay, thank you, Christine. As Christine said, I'm John Kimani, working with the HI, Humanity and Inclusion, as a disability inclusion specialist. And first, I would start with a note of thank to the team who came up with this. It's quite an interesting and very focused tool, and particularly Addis and the Persons with Disability in South Sudan for developing this kind of a document. Mine was just to probably reflect and respond to some of the concerns raised by members. One, yes, I appreciate we have some members who are hearing impaired in the meeting, and we didn't have an interpreter. I would just want to urge each and everyone that reasonable accommodation is a requested service by the service beneficiaries. So if you have next time you're invited for such a meeting and you know there are members who need any kind of reasonable accommodation, could be sign language, could be documents in advance, or easy to read text, or etc., or physical meeting, could be cited guide and the rest. It's good for you to request for it so that the organizers can be in a position to accommodate you and enable you participate meaningfully in such a forum. Otherwise, if it's not requested, it's quite difficult for the organizers to do such an arrangement. As HI, we have a guiding tool towards reasonable accommodation that we can easily share with Christine, and Christine can spread it out so that next time we are able to accommodate each and everyone. When it comes to us, how we can do in terms of getting more people to be disability expert per se, or disability conscious, or staff who are able to respond to inclusion matters in terms of disability, I will share the case study of South Sudan. Currently, we are working with a gender inclusion technical team, which is housed by a protection cluster. And we have set aside a group of focal points. This could be gender focal points, could be protection focal points from various organizations, and we are offering them support to ensure that they are added in their responsibility and disability angle. So if you have a gender person, we train that gender person to be more disability. And currently we have 35 plus minus members. We are calling it technical support mechanism for inclusion of disability. And it's working very well. It's an example that each other countries can take. If in absence of a well-coordinated working group for persons for disability working group, the technical support mechanism is something that can come in because we are able to share resources there, to share documents, to share content. And as we all know, disability is an evolving concept. So each and every day we have new things to learn, and the members are able to tap on this resource. And the main objective is to make sure the IS guardian is operational in the country. So the Interagency Standing Committee on Inclusion, it's a document that the members are really using, and it's really giving us some good learning opportunity. So yes, because as HI, Adi said clearly that it's quite difficult for us to achieve inclusion alone. But when we have our focal persons who are there dedicated for other cut-crossing issues like gender, like age, they can be child protection focal person, they can be gender focal persons. It's good to tap on this resource and add them the disability angle so that we are able to have more and more people who are speaking disability inclusion. When we hear Christine championing for this, as HI, we are proud of it because we now know we have one more ambassador outside there. And the money we are given as a HI is one what made us to start all this initiative in South Sudan. And the technical support mechanism has really impacted the protection cluster. We are hoping moving forward to duplicate this to other clusters. And as we avoid it being UN, we want it to be driven by persons with disabilities themselves, the organization of persons with disabilities themselves, so that they are not only as beneficiaries, but they also drive the cause, because there's nothing for us without us. So it's good to share this. I hope Christine will be having forums where we can share good practices, we can share case studies, we can share what is working well from each and every country, so that we are able to see how best can we achieve inclusion as we are all deciding to do that. Thank you. That's what I wanted to share. And thanking everybody and the tax team for this, and we are proud of you as HI. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And maybe we can get from Christine, what would be the next steps, in your opinion, as the co-chair of the intersectionality pillar?
Thank you, Jessica. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are producing a video at the moment that will accompany the dissemination of this resource. And since we are having a sign language interpreter that is will be working with the video producing team, I think we're going to explore if there's a possibility of organizing another sort of a launch, not necessarily a launch, but a dissemination event that could target organizations of persons with disabilities, especially those that are women-led, to ensure that we have a reasonable accommodation provided for. The other one is I could see from the chat that there's a lot of requests for the sharing of a forum to share good practices and learnings. So I'm imagining that one of the things that we could also do as the IS pillar would be to collaborate with South Sudan to see if we could document the GBV AOR specifically, their efforts, how they have been integrating disability inclusion in GBV coordination and programming. And I think that could serve as an advocacy resource, but also help us advocate in other countries on disability inclusion. Yeah, so I think those are the key next steps. It would be dissemination, and UN Women are committed to translate the resource in another language. So we'll probably maybe also have to explore, how do we ensure this resource can be accessible to persons who to the blind, who might not be able to read. I think that is a conversation we can have with Mola, EAT of UNICEF as well, and also looking at how can we have this resource accessible to those who require sign language interpretation. I imagine if doing a video of this resource with sign language interpretation maybe could be helpful.
Great. Thank you, Christine. I see that, and thank you, John, for your very timely comments. And it sounds like we can learn a lot from your experience in South Sudan, and also to get some of those resources that you spoke about. I think we have a question from Alice. Over to you, Alice.
Thank you, Christine and Jessica, for the presentation. I hope I'm clear enough.
We can hear you well.
Yes, good. So I just wanted also to echo that it would be very good to document some of the good practices that has been implemented in South Sudan. Right now I'm in Syria, but we had a very good collaboration with Humanity Inclusion they did trainings on disability to all the GBV partners. And also when we were doing the case management training to all the case workers that we did in batches from the Equatorial regions to the Northern Baragazel region to all the 10 states of South Sudan, we also ensured that there was a translator for the case management training. There was a disability organization in South Sudan that was led by one lady called Caroline. The only challenge we had was that, as I said, there are not so many resource persons in place. So even if you want to bring in someone, facilitate them to help us with the sign language during the training, you don't find that person handy. So that's why I was saying that it would also be good to have the resource persons in place, either within the organization or within a location, and then see the gaps and see, I know advocacy is one avenue, but also how can we be more proactive to identify maybe vocational training skill locations where disability, persons who can support people with disability can be trained so that they can be supported. I was even thinking that for the vocational trainings that happen in the women and girls friendly spaces, there is literacy training, there is maybe other skills training. Why can't we also maybe do these preliminary trainings on people with disability? So those are some of the areas that we really wanted I really wanted to share, but we could really document some of these good practices so that other areas can also emulate. Thank you so much for the good resources that you have shared with us, and we continue to really benefit from your expertise. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Alice. I think that I will turn it over to Fanta for the last question, and he will also give the response. Fanta, over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. I think one of the questions which was raised after our submission was what are the challenges where gender equality, GBV, and disability inclusion in the humanitarian program cycle? That was the question from Joseph Mosibilo, I think from Joseph. So just to share my observation and experience, the first thing is the lack of awareness and understanding by the overall humanitarian actors, because the level of knowledge and understanding on the importance of including all those aspects in the humanitarian program cycle is of paramount, because if we don't have that knowledge or understanding, then there would be lack of prioritization and then also integration into the humanitarian program cycle. This may involve from all stages, from assessment up to MNE in the humanitarian program cycle. The other thing that I may feel is also the insufficient data, especially lack of, adequate data on the specific needs and then experience of, persons with disability, which may also limit the design of some projects to address the specific needs in the HPC. The third issue, which I think would be important, is the inadequacy of resources or limited funding availability. As I've said earlier, back 1.5 years ago, we allocated some 300,000 to HI, humanitarian inclusion, but the needs are continuing. More and more people are being affected by humanitarian crisis. As of then, we were not able to provide more resources given the shrinking amount of resources. So that would, influence one or the other for the exclusion of issues about disability during planning, implementation on MNE aspect. The last one I would say is the aspect of course, inaccessible services and infrastructures are the most common evidence that would affect or limit the integration into HPC. But in South Sudan also, one key issue which I want to share is the limited number of actors which are really advocating and pushing the agenda. That's also another area which we need to look at and work together in order to advance the agenda on GBV and disability inclusion in the HPC. I thank you so much. Over to you, Chris, and then Jessica.
Thank you, Fanta. And again, it sounds like we have so much to learn from the South Sudan context. And I'm sure there are other contexts as well that have been really engaging and innovative interventions that we can learn from. And I think that, as Christine had said, is a next step for the regional GBV working group for East and Southern Africa, which is to be able to bring together all of those learning experiences and best practice and make them available to everyone here and throughout the region. I note that we only have a few minutes left. I am going to ask our global GBV AOR coordinator, Jennifer Chase, to provide some insights into this process, maybe from the global level, but then also some of the things you've heard here today. And then I will hand it back over to Christine Appio, who is, of course, the chair of the intersectionality pillar and a very active member of the regional GBV working group. So Jennifer, over to you for some last thoughts and reflections, and then I will hand it over finally to Christine Appio to bring us out. Jennifer, really happy to see you on the line again. And it's great that our member organizations can hear you and see you as our global coordinator of the GBV AOR. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jessica. And it's exciting to really hear how much engagement there is in this topic, which is so important. And it seems like there's a lot of ideas and interest in having more opportunities to share experiences, to share resources. We got to hear examples from South Sudan. I know that whole of Syria has also been doing a lot of work in this area. And I recently went on mission to Ukraine, and they have a very strong advocate, like a very strong sort of umbrella group that works on disabilities and doing a lot of advocacy. And I think one of their frustrations is thinking about the number of physical disabilities resulting from the war and seeing how much construction is going on of new buildings and feeling like there's a lost opportunity to not already being making new buildings accessible to wheelchairs and to other physical disabilities. And I think that we heard also about the intellectual disabilities we need to take account. And, you know, not all disabilities are visible immediately to people. So we have to be really aware and be sensitive. And it's great to hear all of this discussion around interpretation and sign language. And I think there are also with technology now, new opportunities using more accessible technology to address disabilities and to increase inclusion. But I think really the energy coming from this group just now, it's 114 participants online and just really keen interest to do something. And I think that's one of the very first steps, and it sounds like there's interest to pursue this more deeply. So I really want to appreciate the work that the Inclusion Regional Group is doing on this, as well as linking with the Disabilities Regional Group that's in the UN. And I think also just not to think about disabilities in the sense of beneficiaries, but think about our teams, our staff, when we have meetings, including persons living with disabilities into our groups so that we are more aware of what is needed for access to be real. And I heard some of these conversations. Great to hear your voice again, Alice. Thinking about women, girls, safe spaces as potential places to train on sign language, all kinds of opportunities and interests out there. And I think part of this, I also heard people saying, we need to put this into our budget, right? This is something we talk about in also around duty of care and self-care. We're like, you have to put these things into the budget because thinking about it at the last minute isn't good enough. So hopefully all of us will also start including these issues in our budget. Fanta was also talking about the importance of data when we do the HPC, also ensuring that we are seeing this as a cross-cutting issue, looking at intersectionality. Actually, I remember in my mission to Somalia, someone from one of the disabilities organizations actually said, I'm not a cross-cutting issue, I'm a person, and I need to have access and be included and have ensure that our needs are addressed. So I think also it's important to do advocacy ourselves and look at how we can, as you said, disseminate using case studies, raising awareness, and ensuring that we have persons with disabilities among our different groups that are meeting. So again, really just a huge applause for this work. I know that a lot is, I could see that there's a lot of interest, and I wish you well for gathering this information together and informing us so we can also share this with other regions, because I think that really often East and Southern Africa, you're ahead of the curve, and that pushes the rest of us to look at, are we doing enough in the other regions, and how do we learn from each other? So thank you for all the ideas that were shared here. I know Christine Apio will be working with her team to gather those ideas and share them, and great to hear of the launch of this new available resource, and for all of you during this very busy time of the year for attending the session and for engaging in the discussion at the end. Back to you, Christine Apio.
Thank you, Jennifer Tess, and really amazing to have you join this launch event. We are grateful. Thank you to all our participants. My apologies goes to our participants who are unable to follow because there was no sign language interpretation. We really apologize. We will explore a possibility of organizing another event, smaller event, probably targeting organizations of persons with disability, but also just some of the things, summarizing some of the recommendations that has come up from this thing is that one, we need to provide platform to share good practices on disability inclusion in GBV programming and GBV in GBV coordination and programming, documenting good practice, specifically focusing on South Sudan. This is a conversation that I will take it. We will be following up with our South Sudan GBV colleagues. Mapping of sound language interpreters, and there is a recommendation that such mapping should include organizations of persons with disability, particularly those that are women-led. We have taken that into consideration. Mapping of available resources. Yes, that's already linked to the sign language interpreters, but maybe looking at also other available resources. Opportunities to support capacity building of grassroots organizations of persons with disability, specifically women with disabilities. We have taken note of that. Funding for sign language interpreters. So thank you so much. We are going to take this conversation back to the intersectionality pillar of the regional GBV working group. Those of you who have requested for opportunity to be part of regional coordination mechanisms on this, from my understanding, there isn't any yet, but I'm going to also have a follow-up conversation as a coach together with the Population Council as co-chair of IS pillar with the regional interagency disability working group to see if there's a feasibility of having some sort of mechanisms to ensure we are constantly engaging with field teams. Thank you so much. I mentioned in the beginning that we are producing a video. So we will disseminate the video as soon as it's finalized. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your active participation. On behalf of the intersectionality pillar, we would like to extend our appreciation to disability inclusion experts from UNICEF, that is Yetne Beresh, Niguse Mola, and Christel Julio. They're also part of the Interagency Disability Working Group for the region. Our appreciation goes to South Sudan GBV Area of Responsibility and their member organization, Humanity and Inclusion, for their inputs, reviews, and ensuring a field perspective is strongly reflected in this resource. Our appreciation also goes to UNICEF, East and Southern Africa region for supporting with the editing of these resources, and UNFPA Somalia for supporting the design work. And finally, to all our members of the intersectionality pillar of the regional GBV working group for your technical inputs, engagement for the past 6 months. And lastly but not least, thank you to all of you for participating in this launch. This comes to the end of our launch event. Do have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Asanteni kabisa.